I'm a woman refined by fire, but not consumed by it.
I've been an award-winning leader celebrated for my success, but I've also been laid off, survived a house fire, and battled chronic illness. Every setback became a setup to rise, reinvent, and shine brighter. I've created the Connie Korbelic Podcast, a space to help you rise and reinvent with confidence. Join me every Saturday and step boldly into your next chapter.
Well, good morning. Happy Saturday, September the 6th, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. I hope you guys are doing well today. Quite excited about today's episode. Really dove deep in some research and stuff with today's topics, and a lot of it was very enlightening. Learned a lot myself. But hey, we are live. We are live on Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And hey, if you're new here, welcome to this corner of the internet. I'm your host, Connie, and I help people navigate the pain of job loss, career transition, feeling invisible, just helping them rise with clarity, reinvent with confidence, and stand out in their purpose in today's talent marketplace. Now, before we dive in, let's kick things off with a little poll. Which one of these scares you more? A, being overlooked for your hard work, or B, being noticed and feeling like you can't live up to the expectations? Tough choice, right? Tough one. Drop A or B in the chat. So which one scares you more? A, being overlooked for your hard work, or B, being noticed and feeling like you can't live up to those expectations? Take a look here and see. A/B says, I am Mitch Race. Okay, I see a little bit of both coming in. Now they're both really hard. If you had to choose one, which one is worse? Which one is worse? I feel like for me, I'd rather have like my hard work be overlooked than being noticed and be like, oh gosh, now the bar is set and now I need to achieve those expectations. I think that one scares me more. All right. We got New York in the house this morning. I absolutely love it. Thank you so much for tuning in today. It is certainly a grateful Saturday. And I'm jiving with this music this morning, honestly. I was a little upbeat, a little summer fun. I think this month the first day of fall is just a few weeks away. Wow, this year is just flying by. And I'm so glad that I've done things this year to push myself to a better, more strength and strong and powerful and growing individual this year. I'm very proud of myself. So we are on our way to continuous growth. Continuous improvement is always the focus. All right. So bear with me here. We're going to transition a few things just quickly. All right. Good morning. We've got Strong Island, New York in the house. Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining. All right. So for those who might just be checking in, we had a quick poll to kind of get us started, a quick little icebreaker. So before we dive in, which one of these things scares you more? A, being overlooked for your hard work, or B, being noticed and feeling like you can't live up to those expectations? Drop A or B in the chat. I'd love to see your feedback. So far, we've got a little mix of both. Good morning, Trinidad. Thank you so much for checking in and watching today. All right, so we'll jump right into our topic today. And really, this is just winning the war within, authenticity versus imposter syndrome. And both A and B, as in our poll kind of opening there, are tied to the same struggle, the war between authenticity and imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome whispers, you're not enough and you don't belong here. But authenticity, in an alternate argument, says you do belong. Your story, your gifts, your presence matter. And I've been there myself. I have walked through layoffs, demotions, career shifts, just seasons of feeling overlooked. And each time that imposter voice tried to drown out the authentic me. But here's the twist. It's something I found interesting as I was putting the content together for today's episode. Research shows maybe the point isn't to erase imposter syndrome entirely, but to transform it, to let it sharpen your authenticity instead of silencing it. And I was just like, that is like, we'll get into that a little bit here in a second, but it just made me look at the imposter syndrome an entirely different way, a new kind of enlightening to the topic. We're always trying to erase imposter syndrome, like, oh, I don't need to feel that way. I can't feel that way. I have to get rid of those feelings. But there's research that shows that those who have faced imposter syndrome actually do have some positive benefits to their life. So we're going to dive into that. So today, let's unpack that war and add discovery on how authenticity can rewrite the story you're telling yourself. All right, so let's get started. All right, I'm so excited. If you've ever been laid off, demoted, overlooked, or rejected, you've probably felt this war inside. Do I shrink and hide and try and prove myself? Or do I rise up and step into who I really am, all the flaws and all? And as I was doing my research and putting things together, I was like, where did the word authenticity come from? Where did imposter syndrome come from? So we're going to touch on a little bit of both today. The word authenticity comes from the Greek authentikos, meaning one who acts by their own hand. Wow. So simple yet so impactful. One who acts by their own hand. This is about being the author of your own life. And in today's workplace, authenticity means more than just being yourself, but living aligned, where your values, your words, and your actions all align into the individual that you are day by day, week by week, room by room, environment by environment. And research shows that when we feel authentic at work, it's powerful. 71% of people report greater confidence. 60% people feel more engaged. 46% people say they are happier. And almost 93% of employees believe that authenticity is important at work. Wow. 71% of people, if they're walking in their authenticity, they feel a greater confidence at work. They feel more engaged. And 46% are happier. Isn't that amazing? Like when you know who you are and you're being your authentic self, your guards are down, you're just presenting yourself, flaws and all. You're happier, you feel more engaged, and you have a greater confidence. Man, that's amazing. Like all the benefits outweigh anything else. So really, like, what that means is authenticity isn't just fluffy things like, oh, I'm going to be authentic. It's actually fuel to a greater confidence, to feeling more engaged in your work, and ultimately to being happier. Isn't that amazing? So here's the rub, right? The opposite. When we try to live authentically, there's another voice that often shows up, that imposter, right? The term imposter phenomenon was first coined back in 1978 by two psychologists, and I hope I don't butcher their names here, but Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes, or Imes. Anyway, their research focused on high-achieving women who, despite all evidence of success, believed they were frauds. They feared that someone would find out they weren't as smart or capable or deserving people as they thought. And that was interesting to me because I'm like, it's 2025. And this imposter phenomenon dates back to 1978. And there's sort of like a faux pas, like stigma, like we don't talk about feeling and having an imposter syndrome feeling, yet back to 1978, people were studying it, feeling it, talking about it, identifying this phenomenon. And over time, the language shifted from phenomenon to syndrome. And what started as a study of women in academia has grown into something we now recognize across industries, across genders, across leadership levels. And the truth, what research shows, is almost 70% of adults will experience imposter feelings at some point. 70%. More than half of adults, no matter the generation, 70%. That is like just a number that's hard to imagine. Like, we're all self-confident, we're all self-aware, yet 70% of us will experience those imposter feelings at some point. And imposter syndrome isn't the belief that you're a fraud. Imposter syndrome is the belief that you're a fraud even when you're successful. And studies show, and I found this was just so awakening for me, studies show among executives, the number climbs higher. 71% of CEOs and 65% of senior leaders admit they feel imposter syndrome. Chief executive officers have imposter syndrome, feel imposter syndrome. Not just your front lines, your customer service, your sales, your marketing, those teams. The higher levels you climb on that corporate ladder, the more those feelings intensify and the more you're likely to feel those. And it's even higher for women executives. 75% of executive women feel those imposter syndrome feelings. 75%. That just blows my mind. So 71% of CEOs, 65% of senior leaders admit they feel it. But then for women executives, it's 75%. A pandemic for women in leadership feeling imposter syndrome. And in some fields like software engineering, more than half report frequent imposter feelings, with higher rates for women and professionals of color in the fields of software. Let that set for a second. So I'll be honest with you. I've lived this. I have faced this. I had a demotion that shook me. I walked through layoffs that left me questioning my worth. And I've sat in rooms feeling invisible, even when I knew I had earned my seat. That imposter voice just wasn't whispering. It was flat out screaming. And yet those very moments became the training ground for authenticity in my own life. And now think about it. If you were just demoted, laid off, rejected, passed over for that promotion, maybe next year, those feelings don't just show up, they scream. It might sound something like this, those thoughts that come into your head. After demotion, they figured out I wasn't good enough. After layoff, if I really had value, they would have kept me. After being overlooked, maybe I should just stay small. Maybe I don't really have things to contribute. After rejection, I knew I wasn't cut out for this. That's what that voice is going to sound like. And that becomes this internal war of those feelings, but yet you know that you have authenticity and you know those aren't the things, it's the feelings. And we have to captivate those thoughts and begin to process that tug of war internally to what we really should be saying and speaking life to ourselves. So here's the war, because authenticity says live true to yourself and show up as you are. Imposter syndrome whispers, if they really knew you, they'd see you don't belong. After a career shakeup and transition that I walked through, I kept asking myself, do I quiet quit and just survive? Do I hustle harder to prove I belong here? Or do I lean into my truth even if it feels risky? And that's that tug of war I'm describing. We feel stuck between performance and presence, between seeking external validation or leaning into that internal worth. I'll tell you, I chose to lean into my internal worth. And that's where hope shows up. That's where your heart starts throwing sparks and ignites a passion and a yearn to dream again. I'll pause here for a second just to take a look at the socials. I see we've got DC in the house. Thank you. Thank you for joining today. Strong Island, New York value. Super stats on authenticity at work. Fantastic. I'm glad you guys are getting value. It quite shocked me, actually, to see the numbers being so large. I honestly didn't think that was the case. And there's some solace when you see that. It's like 70%. There's almost some like, it's okay for me to feel this way because 70% of people feel this way. There's that solace in community, knowing that other people feel the same, have felt the same, and not just, mid-level management, senior leadership, but CEOs as well. I was shocked to know that. And it sort of gives me a peace about it that, hey, we all struggle with it. And if we know that we all struggle with it and we're sharing in that vulnerability, it helps all of us overcome. %, that's accurate and believable. I don't think it ever fully goes away. Awesome. Yes. IMH race, women's numbers are also higher than men when it comes to self-esteem also. Wow. So a correlation between that imposter syndrome and self-esteem. That imposter voice is certainly loud. DC, do those CEOs who command 5 to 7 times their annual $1 million salary also suffer with imposter syndrome or run deeper into denial? That's a good question, a good thought to research and review. Thanks for presenting that, DC. We never quiet quit. No. No, but the thought crosses your mind. We don't want to go there, but it's that internal tug of war. Do I just shrink and stay small and quiet quit and just check in and check out every day, right? Or, do I be true to myself and just put myself out there and fight for what I know is true? I am Mitch Race. Your authentic voice sometimes says you don't know you. Ooh, I love that. I love that. That's so important. And in layoffs, in career shakeups, in rejection, it gives us the opportunity, it gives us space. And out of everything that is negative about career shakeups and economic downturns, layoffs, demotions, those are hurtful, hard, painful, negative times. But one of the things that I find so interesting in those times is it opens up space for us to review, reflect, look in the mirror, build ourselves to be a stronger individual, right? Our career ship has gone from port to port to port, and now we're back out at sea, the wide open sea, where we can internally reflect on who we really are and have the time to do those reflections and to say, who am I really? And I've had a couple episodes in the past about that. But if you can lock in to the time that shakeup, that layoff, that demotion is giving you back to look and grow internally, to plant those seeds and begin to water them to where you grow and you come out of that shakeup a different individual, well, that is the ultimate reward, for something that happened to you, but then you're using it to propel you forward. And that's the path that we should follow. All right. Well, I'm going to jump back into the rest of our segment here. And as we talk on this war between imposter syndrome and authenticity, I'm going to tell you what the research shows. So studies in leadership prove this. When leaders are authentic, 90% of employees feel more engaged, and productivity rises 30%. Wow. When leaders are authentic, 90% of employees feel more engaged and productivity rises 30%. As a leader myself, I've always been the type of individual to lead from the front. It's never, you do this, you do that, blah, blah, blah. It's let's do this. We're going to do this. I've always been in the trenches with my teams, supporting them, lifting them up. How can I better support you? What tools, what resources do you need to do your job better, more effectively? What opportunities do we have for continuous improvement? What plans and action plans can we put in place to correct that? And so basically reading that, when leaders are authentic, 90% of employees feel more engaged. So your employees have a larger value of trust in what you're doing, in your leadership style. And because there's trust there, they're going to do as much as they can to impact the business and to give you the productivity. And if you're in any organization, productivity typically leads to revenue. So you're going to add revenue to your organization when you're authentic and when your employees are more engaged in their work, supporting the company. And one other thing I found interesting as well, as far as the research between, with leadership between imposter syndrome and authenticity, is they found when leaders are authentic, their retention nearly doubles. So instead of having a lot of turnover where people aren't staying in the organization, their staff retention doubles. Wow. People stay engaged and productive, and they trust their leadership more. All from authenticity. And those are organizational benefits when their leaders are authentic. And we talked about earlier, when we're authentic to ourselves, we're happier, we're more engaged. It's a win-win, right? So we all should just strive to be authentically ourselves, regardless of peer pressure, social pressures, that comparison syndrome in the day that we live in. We always see the highlight reels on Facebook and Instagram. And guys, that's not always true, right? Stay true to yourself, who you are, your strengths, your values, and who you are as a unicorn in the talent marketplace. All right. So on the flip side, when people can't be authentic at work, productivity, creativity, and loyalty drop. So authenticity heals the wound imposter syndrome creates. It says you don't have to hustle harder to prove yourself. You anchor yourself in truth. And here's what I wish I had known in the seasons of layoffs and rejection. The power was never in the title or the paycheck, and the research proves it. Authenticity is what builds trust, engagement, and resilience, and that's where influence really comes from. And I had to learn that the hard way. Now, I found something else surprising. Researchers at MIT found that imposter syndrome thoughts aren't all bad. In fact, people who wrestle with those feelings often become stronger collaborators, more empathetic leaders, and better listeners. Wait a minute, you mean to tell me this imposter syndrome that all of us are trying to wipe from our lives actually can be a strength when we spin it? We can apply it to our lives to become a stronger collaborator, more empathetic leader, and better listeners? What? Anyone else wait a minute, we look so negatively at imposter syndrome, and yet there's a positive that can be beneficial to our lives. Now, why is that? Because we know what it feels like to doubt ourselves. So instead, we work harder to lift others. Because we felt that imposter syndrome ourselves, we now have an empathy to the people that we work with. We know they probably, and the studies show that they feel the same. So we're building bridges to be able to collaborate, to build stronger relationships, to be more empathetic leaders, and overall better listeners. So maybe the point isn't to erase imposter syndrome entirely. Maybe it's to transform it and let it sharpen your authenticity instead of silence it. Now, transformation is when one thing becomes something entirely new. We're all trying to transform ourselves and grow day by day. And so I was so excited as I started this research and was reviewing things, because I've had imposter syndrome, probably still challenged with it. According to research, 75% of executive women deal with it on a daily. So now I'm going to use it to be a stronger collaborator and a more empathetic leader, and certainly a better listener. I have to remind myself sometimes I get excited in conversations and I resonate with people, so I want to jump in and say my thoughts right away. as a means to like relate to you. That's how I am. Oh, hey, I have a story like that too. But God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. So this year I'm trying to listen more and better and respond slower and fewer times. Soak up as much as I can around me from the leaders around me and the environments that I'm in. I'm a philomath, so I love to learn. So the less I speak, the more I'm able to learn and absorb. I hope you guys have gotten some value from that, from our topics today. I'm going to stop here and just check on socials. Got New York, your authentic voice sometimes says, oh, we talked about that earlier. You don't know you, and that's so true. Value, Strong Island, New York, tell it. Let's see, we got DC, hold on to a thread until it twines into a sturdier cord and a stronger, thicker rope. I love that. Thank you, DC. Way to show up. Take 2, the fight with the troops. Yes, love it. New York saying value. Maybe we should become better imposters, says I am a trace. The flip side to the coin, right? Like just taking those feelings and just knowing that it's more prevalent in our communities and with the people we work with every day than we thought. And that's just, there's something about being vulnerable and knowing that the person next to you is probably dealing with the same thoughts and stuff. We're very critical of ourselves, but if we break down our barriers and we're honest with ourselves, we can find community and vulnerability with each other and help each other, whether it's an employee, a peer, a supervisor, another leadership individual, for those in the corporate world or just in offices and working in general. It builds a bridge to a stronger relationship. And that will take you miles. Miles. I love it. I am Mitch Ray's terrific podcast today. Awesome. All right, well, we're going to bring this home. So here's my challenge for you guys this week. Notice when that imposter voice starts to whisper, starts to speak and scream at you. Then ask yourself, what would authenticity say in this same moment? That answer might sound like courage or vulnerability or simply saying, I belong here. And I think for me this week, it's I belong here. I'm just going to remind myself I belong here. Because unicorn, you do belong here. You were created to rise, reinvent, and finally be seen, not to live small in someone else's shadow. So keep shining, keep walking in the power of your own authorship. And I'll see you guys Tuesday, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time for Radiate in 8. And right back here on Saturday, September 13th for another episode of the Connie Korbelic Podcast. Thank you guys so much for watching, listening today, for downloading. If you guys are watching on the podcast or listening on the podcast platforms, we are on Apple Podcasts, so you guys can take me with you and listen to each episode week by week. We're also in the process of launching to a few others, Amazon Music as well as Spotify. So we'll be up there very soon. Thank you guys so much for your love and support and just being here to listen to the topics. And I hope you're getting value from it and you can apply it to your life day by day. Thank you guys once again. I'm going to give you back the rest of your Saturday, 10:30 Central Standard Time. Have a lovely day. Enjoy your weekend.